So how long must someone be attending UCN before they can work with children or youth?
1 year.
1 year. That's correct. There's also written into the policy, there could be a exception made if there's someone who's coming from another church who's taught for years, and I know they're a religious educator, and they have a reference. Like, there is a way to vet someone before they've waited a year, but the default, and what I basically always use, is that someone will need to be part of our community for a year before working with children and youth. But if you see someone who seems relatively new, and then they start working with children right away, to ask me why, but that's why. Okay?
That's attending, not a member. You don't have to be a member for it.
That's correct. Good point. Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what
You do not have to be a member to work with children and youth. You have to be a part of our community for at least a year so we get to know you. That is a deterrent of someone who's seeking to do children harm, that they need to be in a community for a year before they can be near children. And that is one of the reasons why we do that. It also lets us get to know someone so they feel comfortable being in a room and teaching our children our faith if they've been in our community for a year. So it's a practice that it works for us. How many screenings non-related adults must be present on site? Answer is 2 in the room. If it's, let's go to the next slide. If it's a field trip, it's 3, at least. And
ratio for field trips you have to have? The ratio?
there is a ratio, and that's going to be in the policy, and I'll let you look at that. I think it's 1 to 8, but that I haven't memorized, but before a field trip, I would make sure I was compliant.
Okay.
So these are the things that you need to know about for field trips. We do need permission slips signed by parents and guardians in order to take any children off-site. We do background checks for all of our drivers, so I can't just have someone say, hey, I'll drive for this field trip. We do have, they need to be screened. And adults, we really do we do need 2 adults in each vehicle. And that we do our best to have 2 adults in each vehicle. Non-related adults, that's another requirement of our policy and of our insurance, in each vehicle. So it does mean that sometimes we have big caravans going to places, but that's so we meet the requirements of our policy. And the youth responsibility here is that any of our youth, and that's the high school age that we're talking about, they need to sign a code of conduct before doing any event that's even more than youth group. So if they're going on a field trip, we need them to agree that they are going to follow X, Y, and Z. And so that's part of the policy as well. And that we need to have seatbelts for everybody. So, Rovers. So Sunday morning supervisors, either in the faith formation wing, if that's where we have classes, and or the parish house if we have classes over here. This year, we will have Our Whole Lives the first and second Sundays of most months, starting in October. So we will need rovers on those days. We're not going to have rovers on days that we don't have children and youth on that side. One of the things that rovers have is they will have a clipboard with the contact info of myself and the other staff who are here, so they can reach us if there's a need. And they will also have information of all the classes and where they are and who the adults are in those classes, so that you are someone who has an extra level of information about what's happening in the building that day. That can help you if someone is coming in late and they don't know where they're going. You can help them find the appropriate classroom for them. It's also good to know who's supposed to be where and who's not supposed to be. If there's someone who's not supposed to be there, you can see they're not one of those people on your list, and how can you help redirect them to a place that's more appropriate for them to be. Because we do not want we don't want adults that we are not familiar with milling around and going into classrooms that we don't know. We asked you to bring your cell phone. This is something that we've asked of rovers, so they can be in touch, especially if they're on this side of the building, be able to be in touch with me on the other side of the building, or with Erica if I am not here that Sunday. Erica is our faith formation assistant, and she's fabulous, and you all need to know that she's so great, and she works on Sunday mornings. And it's helpful to introduce yourselves to the volunteers, so they know that you are there to help them if they need something. The wonderful thing about rovers is that, or the interesting thing about rovers is it doesn't always seem like we need you until we don't have you, and then we really miss you. So it's wonderful to have a rover, to have a really low-key job where there's not a lot asked of them, but your role is so important because you're giving us the extra level of security and safety, and to know that we've got an extra set of hands to help our children. Next slide.
Last week I forgot that we needed the 2 people per room, and I went outside to set us up for our activity, and the rovers stepped right in, so thank you, rovers.
Great. Great.
Because sometimes we forget.
Yep. So with the parish house, the rovers, we asked you to stand in the hallway, right outside, like where the art is. You get to look at art. Downstairs, and to be mindful if someone is coming in. So this is the one of the reasons why we want to have a rover here is to be aware that if someone's coming in off the street, that they just don't go right up to upstairs where our children are. So that could be a way to say, oh, the sanctuary's right in here, or social hour will start in a little bit of time. It rarely happens that someone comes in and they're not supposed to be here, but it's helpful to be ready to welcome someone, but also redirect someone. So it's kind of 2 things that we're asking of our rovers. If any rovers have a specific question about that, I can talk to you about that in a rover conversation, but I want everybody to know that that's kind of what our rovers are doing. And to be available to assist in a classroom if needed. So we have Our Whole Lives this year, and we are most likely not going to ask you to go into the class and help out because the teacher has to go do something else. We mostly often have 3 adults in that class, so if one person needs to leave, it'll still be okay. But they can know that they can ask you to go get something if you need it, but your rover will be downstairs. And on the clipboards for all the teachers, you will have the phone number of the rover, so you don't need to leave the room to reach them. You can call them on their cell phone. So that's one of the other reasons why we want rovers to have their cell phones. A helpful thing for rovers with cell phones is you can listen to the service streaming if you want to do that. So a lot of our rovers don't miss the service, they just get to hear it on their phones. Similar for Faith Formation Wings, the place where you stay is the entranceway closest to the glass walkway. I don't have a name for that entrance. Standing there, and your job this year is to not let the kids all run to their classes before they've lined up in the glass walkway for their workshop. So you get to do this. And so I'm so excited that I have a concrete job for those girls. And then assist classrooms as needed. When might a volunteer need a rover? You gave a super example that one of you needed to step outside and do something. That's one. Kid needs to go to the bathroom. And we do have a policy with, if we've got young children who need to go into the bathroom, we let people know that we're going in, you leave the door open, if you've got a real little one who needs help, we could either go get their parents or leave the door open and let people know that this is what's going on. What might a rover say to someone walking down the hallway? What might you say? How can I help you? Yeah, do you know where you're going? Can I help you find something? Are you looking for the bathroom? Sometimes it's easy to say that and then to be aware of that. It's also a way to be I see you. And I see you, and that's a good thing, and it's also an awareness thing too.
Sadie, just a quick question.
Yeah.
Is it true once the service starts, all doors get locked from the outside?
Super good question. No. We are not going to leave the entrance from the parking lot, the accessible one, that stays open. So that's why we want to have the rovers near that entrance.
Okay.
But we do lock the chapel doors at 10 and the lower doors, except for today because there was a fire drill. We lock those at 10:30. We lock those at 10 as well, and that's on the list of roles for the rover to do. And last year, because we didn't have a rover always on this side, we would lock the doors to the parish house. That isn't in our policy that it is locked at a certain time, but if you feel more comfortable having that locked and then you can let someone in, you can do that. So that's something we can talk about.
So it would be locked on the weeks that there's not a rover downstairs?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I'll talk. You're thinking no, we don't tend to lock it. We've got
I actually was
a team
thinking
of people.
opposite. There was somebody that knocked up or that found me as I exited the door near the chapel.
Yeah.
Just looking to come into the church, and I directed her to the sanctuary. But
Yeah.
I was thinking more for outsiders. The doors are all locked, so how do they think we're
Right.
welcoming communities?
Right, exactly,
think
and that's why it's
safety's more
that's
important
why
than
it's
zebra.
helpful to have a rover by those entrances, so you can help, so you're not just like, no one can be here, this is where the kids are, this is, welcome, our church is super confusing to find, where you go, this is where the sanctuary is, that's gonna be the bulk of the conversations that you're gonna have. But yeah, I think it'll stay open. We don't have youth on their own doing coffee crew anymore, that was another awareness of mine that we had before, so I do believe it'll be open, so people can get it. Next, oh, there we go, positive discipline, this is in the policy. That any of you who've been to my training yet so far, we talk about how we're using our covenant as our promises to one another, so that's something you have as a tool for your behavior management in your classroom to remind them of the promises of how they're gonna be together in class. And in our policy, and I would say it anyway, is that we don't yell or shame or belittle the children in our care. And that we do have, there is an outlined plan in the Safe Foundation policy of what to do. There's like these different steps of how to improve problematic behavior. So one is a break inside the classroom, one is a break outside the classroom, maybe going for a walk with a rover. I did that today. It wasn't like a super challenging child, they just weren't getting along with their parent who's a teacher, and I said, okay, come with me, I really need some help passing out snack. And it diffused the situation, it worked well, and there was I knew there was another adult in the hallway, so I could be with this child, helping them go in other spaces, and we kind of worked through that situation without escalating into this big argument between the child and the adult in the room. Yes,
When we talk about the covenant of promises for the children,
yep.
to what are we referring? Is that?
That's the principles when we talk about
Okay.
like the 7 principles, and
And the
underneath
children.
each one,
Okay.
we have what inherent worth and dignity, that's the adult version. Each person is
Yeah, I
important
know.
in how we listen to one another. That's how we're making it concrete for them. Yeah.
Obviously, the rover, in some of these situations, they are the only adult with the child in the hallway. Is there the hallway and the doors are open in the classroom, is that okay? Or they're escorting to the bathroom, so they leave it open, but they're the only adult with that child at the time.
So one of the things it says in here, for a short period of time, so other people know what's going on, if doors are open and there's an awareness, that's okay. Next slide, please. I talked to you about the 4 steps, they're in the policy. Next slide, please. So working with youth. So I mentioned how we're asking youth to sign code of conduct. It'd be great to have that tonight. In the policy, we'll go over like those pages, but if you're meeting here at night, we don't just send the youth out after dark to go out and find their cars or find their parents. We do need to make sure they get to their car or make sure they get to their parents. And usually, if they're not driving yet, we ask parents to come in and we meet with the parents downstairs to pick up. And then specifically talking about the not being alone with the youth online, that includes not accepting friend requests on social media or Facebook pages. That's in our policy, and that's something that we're not going to do there may be people who are friends with you, because like your friends, your families, and then like you've got a kid who you're friends with on Facebook, because you know each other in that way, but as soon as you're an adult leader as an advisor, you have a different hat that you wear, and you need, in order to have the privilege of being a youth advisor, you need to be able to pass the screening that we have to keep our youth safe. So we need to be clear of what the expectations are of someone who's working with our teens is different than someone who's a family friend. So if there's someone who's a family friend who becomes a youth advisor, we're going to talk about what you can't do and what you can do. Does that make sense? And that we notify and communicate with parents about the ways that we're communicating with our youth. That's something we're figuring out this year. It's always hard to figure out what the best way it is to reach our youth and our families of youth, but we are working to keep families as part of that conversation. We're not just going to be texting your youth without you knowing that we're texting your youth. There may be youth texting each other, and we're working on having that be like, if it's a youth-sponsored event, we want to have adults in that circle of communication. Next slide, please.
Question?
Yes.
Does this include email? So I can't email a youth, I have to CC you, Allison, or the youth's parent?
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Okay. So we do screening here as part of our policy requirements. So if you've never worked with children and youth before in the church, I will be, either I have been or I will be in touch with you by sending you an email where you have to fill out a form so we need to do a background check. And that is background checks for criminal and sex offender registry. And we also do the driver checks, which I mentioned. And our youth, so we do have some youth volunteers. It's awesome. I love that they're wanting to teach in faith formation. We don't background check them. We can't do that if they're under 18, but we do reference checks for them. Next slide. And the forms that I'm asking that you need to sign every year, if you've been teaching for a while, they'll be familiar forms, is the agreement to teach and your code of ethics. And then we do have an application screening for people who are employed or volunteering for the first time. And that also covers a lot of what's in the background check authorization and that piece there. So not everybody will fill that out every year. And I have them here today, if you haven't filled them out.
That's what I wanted to say, I've been here forever, but I've not done this, so.
Right,
I'm
so
involved
we'll
with
be in touch about that.
that. Good.
Any questions? Thank you for giving so much of your time today, and we filmed it, so hopefully this will be something that we can just review again another time. We're gonna edit it together into a snazzy video. And I'm here if you've got specific questions, and I have the agreements to teach, and I have copies of the Youth Code of Ethics here for you to just be aware of.